And now, what has the impact of the strike been on tourism? We bring in the CEO of the Cape Town Tourism, Enver, Duminy, to give us an indication as what impact the taxi violence has had on the tourism sector there in the province. Enver, good morning. Thank you so much for making time for us. There was a statement that was issued by the Chamber of Commerce and Industry in the Western Cape, speaking about how the strike has affected the economic activity within the province, but also the impact, for instance, that warning that was issued by the UK government to its travellers has had on the hospitality industry. Speak to us about the broader impact of the strike on the industry.
Good morning, Aldred. What I find quite interesting is the fact that 2 weeks ago, Cape Town and South Africa was recognized by the United Kingdom travellers as the best city and the best country in the world for tourism. And 2 weeks later, we're finding travel advisories, not only from the UK, we're seeing US, Netherlands, a lot of our key source markets put out travel advisories, and rightly so. Purely because, again, the taxi strike has had some violent incidents that has affected, of course, local citizens, but also has affected tourists who have been injured. And we're also aware of the one incident where a tourist was killed during these violent strikes. So the impact on the tourism and hospitality is, of course, the one impact is on our employees in the sector, which has come out of 2.5 years of COVID. We were seeing significant recovery. We were starting to re-employ people again back in the sector. And unfortunately, with the taxi strikes, a lot of the employees within the sector, both travel, tourism and hospitality, can't get to work, which means that hotels, restaurants are all having to deal with the challenges of reduced services. We've also heard of some of the hotels going on to temporary services, and then restaurants not being able to open up at all because the chef or the kitchen staff have not arrived. So this is having a knock-on effect within the tourism sector. I think in the short term, we may be able to manage it as best as possible. But the concern for us is around the medium and long term, around, of course, we're seeing possible cancellations of not only accommodation, but also conferencing. And of course, the continued negative brand perception of the destination will be, again, a tall order for us to kind of rebuild in the months and years to come.
Yeah, and just considering as well that the monthly tourism report that was issued in June indicated that the tourist arrivals via air increased by 87%, originated from overseas markets, and 13% from the African continent. Is there an indication, though, from the industry what it is or what it hopes should be taking place going forward so that you don't have the situation that you currently find yourselves in, especially when it comes to, at least for your workers, being able to get the alternative transport that is required? However, though, there is, of course, the violence and intimidation that is coming from people who are on this strike.
So, Aldred, I mean, what we have been doing as Cape Town Tourism has been engaging with our counterparts in other global cities who've also had public transport strikes. The challenge is always around, to your point, is the intimidation, the attacks on other forms of public transport and even private sector transport. What we mustn't forget as well is that the challenge for us going forward, of course, is to make sure that our employees are safe. Hotels have accommodated their employees at the hotel and accommodation. Attractions have also tapped into the accommodation sector to see if they can also temporarily house some of the employees so that at least they can be closer to work and have to do that. But we mustn't forget also a lot of the people within the sector are sometimes also single parents with kids at home. So it's not always as easy as that. But what we continue to do is work with local and provincial government and national government to find solutions. And what I think your viewers must also be mindful of is the fact that even in the tourism sector, our vehicles are also being impounded from time to time. Also around operating licenses, PDP's license, and also drivers not having licenses. But what we found is that there's actually been a backlog of approval of operating licenses within the tourism sector for the last 3 years. And that means that we actually drive around now with application forms, proof that we have submitted it, the previous approved license, etc. But we always ensure that the vehicles are roadworthy and that the drivers are qualified and have valid licenses. And we engage with both the city and the provincial government on a regular basis to prevent the impounding of our vehicles. And that is an ongoing thing. And that's why I say, from a tourism perspective, we understand both sides. But what we do ask for is a speedy resolution to this. And as long as peace can prevail, we can hopefully all sit around the table and move forward.
Yeah. And on that issue relating to the impounding of vehicles, what is it that the tourism sector would like to see with regards to this? And have you engaged the City of Cape Town with regards to the concerns that have been raised by it's been raised by the taxi industry, it's been raised by e-hailing services, and that is in relation to the bylaws that have been put in place, and the argument from the minister as well that it is in conflict with the national law?
So as Cape Town Tourism, and also in partnership with our other associations like SABC at the national level, we continue to engage with all spheres of government on an ongoing basis to make sure that we also continue to educate all new officers that come into the system who may not be aware of the challenges around the backlog. I think what we're all asking for is for the backlog of all the operating licenses to be sped up. There's a board that hasn't been sitting for a long while that is also holding up the process. So what we're asking for, as long as we can get those operating licenses, we are happy to comply as the tourism industry. We continue to comply as the tourism industry. And what we need to do is to continue to do that and work hand in hand with government, because we understand the need for safe transport for tourists and for locals. And that's what we will continue to do as industry association.
Okay, Enver, thank you so much for your time. That is Enver, who is the CEO of Cape Town Tourism, Enver Duminy, there on the impact that this ongoing strike has had on the tourism sector in the province. As we've indicated, that the City of Cape Town has now called the taxi industry to a meeting. Not too sure whether Santaco has confirmed that they will be attending that meeting, but Santaco saying that they will be going to court to sort an urgent interdict to prevent the impounding of their vehicles and also the immediate release of those vehicles that have been impounded.